Testing. Testing.
There we go.
When you want to mute it, just hit it once. And sorry about that. Yep.
Okay.
Houston, we have ignition.
Okay.
You're good to go. Thank you.
Okay. I think so. Are you kicking us off? Or kicking us out?
Kicking us out. Does that sound right? We're kicking it off. There we go.
There we go.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. We're happy to see you, and we're happy to have Darren here again. I don't think he needs more introduction. He's just amazing and awesome, and we love having him here. So thank you. Breakfast meals today. So, okay. Well, turn it over.
Thank you. All right. Like she said, we are everything breakfast today. And not everything, but we should be able to give you a good idea of the things that you would want to store or to freeze dry for breakfast, whether it be snacks, individual items, or meals. So we're going to try something new today. So normally in the past, I haven't brought food to really share. Sometimes I have a snack or so, but today we're going to rehydrate, and I brought a large bag of breakfast scramble, and we're going to rehydrate that, and we're going to let you try it. So now one thing about the food we produce at Wasatch Freeze Dry is that we use everyday recipes. So it's things that you would find in any other cookbook. Maybe you do it yourself. And so the people that we cater to are people that want to eat freeze-dried food every day, or can, for some reason. All right, so let's have to do this manually here. So there we go. So we've haven't seen it. So we manufacture freeze-dried food, and we are also certified master technicians for Harvest Dry freeze dryers. And so myself and one of my other technicians, my son, we probably have worked on probably most of your machines in here. In fact, out of curiosity, how many people have I been out to, or have we been out to their house? Okay, quite a few. So anyway, we love our customers. So anytime we get a chance to help you, please give us a call. My number's up here. If you have a question about freeze drying, text me anytime. And I usually get to them pretty fast. But you don't have to be like, have a damaged machine or something. If you just have a question about something you want to freeze dry, just give me a text and I'd be happy to help you. Okay, our website is wasatchfreezedry.com. If you want to buy food or accessories, things like that, we have it out there. And then we also deliver. So if you buy a freeze dryer from, for example, the Food Storage Depot, we will deliver it for you for $175. And we bring that out to your house. We set it up, and we go through training until you kick me out the door. And my wife always tells me, you talk too much. But, you know, we always really enjoy passing on the knowledge and making sure that you're comfortable with your new machine and you're ready to go with it. Okay? All right. We talk about this a lot. And I'm just going to, I'm going to breeze over it a little bit because more of a reminder, but when you freeze dry, be sure you're thinking about the full process. Why am I doing this, and what and how do I want to utilize it? Everybody's, a lot of people's heard my lasagna story, right? Who's heard my lasagna story? Should I tell it again real quick? Okay, so when I first got my freeze dryer, my first one years ago, I love lasagna. It's like, I'm going to do lasagna. So I had a medium and I made two 9x13 pans, which will fill 4 trays of a medium. I pull it out of the oven and I slice it up in nice big squares, thick, put them on my trays. And I thought, well, it's a little high. So I just kind of pushed them down and then it squished it out and filled the whole tray. Put it in the freezer because I pre-freeze everything. And the next morning I started my freeze dryer. I put him in the freeze dryer and I was all excited because this was really one of my first meals that I've done. Push start and off it goes. And I'm just waiting for it. And it runs over to the next day and I'm going, okay, 20 hours, you know. And then I kind of look at it again. It's like 30 hours and then 40 hours. I'm going, wait a minute. This isn't supposed to be taking so long. And then after 40 hours, it just kind of gave up and it said, I'm done. So I'm going, I was all excited. So I went and I opened my freeze dryer and I pulled it out and I'm kind of inspecting it and it's wet. And I was like, oh man, 40 hours and it's still wet. Well, here's what I did wrong, okay? Because it's my fault, not the machine's fault. So what happened is, I cut these squares out of a lasagna, and I don't know about you, but if you guys like cheese, I like cheese. And I put a nice layer of cheese on the top of that lasagna. So when I scooped it over and put it on the tray and then pushed it down, I created this umbrella, right? And it would not allow the moisture to come out of the food. So when I was checking it and I kind of picked up that piece of cheese, it was like you could have eaten cold lasagna. I mean, it was not done. So going back to this is what I didn't do is ask myself, why am I doing it this way? Because let's just say, for example, I did get that square lasagna to freeze dry, to get totally dry. I'm going to put it in a bag, right? So I use these bags, and I would have slipped it in this bag and sealed it up and written lasagna on it. Well, if I was going to rehydrate that, how would I do it? I'd pour water in it and I'd stir it up. There goes my beautiful square lasagna piece, right? Because there's really no other way of rehydrating a big piece of noodles and sauce without kind of getting that water mixed in there. So there was no reason for me to do this big square. So what this is to help you think about how you're going to prep it, because how you prep it is going to be determined on how you're going to use it. For example, we're going to talk about eggs today. You may want to powder your eggs, or you may want to just break them up and stick them in the bag. There's different reasons why you'd want to do it either way. So when we get to the egg portion, we'll talk about that, okay? So does this make sense? So decide what you're going to do, prep, and how you're going to prep it, and then how you're going to tray it. So I've had a couple just this last week, 2 weeks ago, people, I went out and I fixed their machine, and they did a couple batches, called me back, said my machine's broken again. And I should have put the pictures up here, but I didn't. And I said, well, what did he have in it? She said, and she sent me pictures. And she had cantaloupe pieces that are about 2 by 3, 2 by 2, about that thick, just saw in a medium. And the ice around her cylinder was about 1.5 inches thick. And I said, well, the problem is you overloaded your machine. And I said, take it out, defrost it, put it back in the freezer, and then just run it again. And she goes, no, I shouldn't have to. I've done this before. And I said, trust me. She goes, okay. Well, she called me the next morning. She goes, yeah, worked fine. So part of putting your food in your freeze dryer is being cognizant of how much water that's in your food. Melons like that are like 95% water. So you're going to expect all that to be pulled out, right? Okay, so then how you're going to hydrate it. Kind of back to that lasagna story. I didn't even think about rehydrating it. But you know, are you going to actually rehydrate it to eat? Are you going to put it in a soup where you really don't need to rehydrate it? At least first, you just put it in there. You know, things like that. You want to have a plan on how you're going to utilize what you just freeze dried. Okay? Yes.
So, can you do lasagna or no?
The question was, can you do lasagna? I do lasagna all the time. I just do it differently. So what I do now is I take a crock pot and I layer my lasagna just like a 9x13 pan. But then when it's done, I will take a big spoon and I will just scoop it out, and then I'll just spread it around in my tray.
With not a ton of cheese
Lots of cheese.
Oh.
The thing is, the cheese isn't the problem, it's how the cheese is setting. So if it's melting in so what I'll do is, yeah, I make my lasagna and it has cheese on top, but since I'm spooning it out, it breaks it all up. But then I'll take some cheese like Parmesan or something, and I will just spread it all over my tray on top of the lasagna, so it incorporates more.
You've got spaces.
Absolutely, yeah,
Instead of
exactly. So if you have that big melted slab on there, it's going to cause you problems. How do I? Same thing. So we'll take, it'll be similar to like the chicken fettuccine, for example. You rip it off, you put your water in it, stir it up, seal it, let it sit for 5 or 6 minutes, and you're ready to go.
So it's more like mush lasagna than lasagna.
It's casserole lasagna, not mush. It doesn't mush. I call my lasagna mush. No, it's like a casserole. And the noodles are big and everything's similar, but it's kind of like if you were to take some lasagna out of a pan and give it to a 3 or 4-year-old, right? You're going to kind of chop it up a little bit so it's manageable. Same way with this. And you want that because then the pieces are...
So I've heard of people spraying stuff. I've heard of different, reconstituting besides just submerging in water. But that doesn't work for lasagna.
Sure it does.
Will you
Well, not with a spray.
repeat his question?
Let's talk about rehydrating when we do this, because there's a lot of questions out there on how to determine how much water to put in it, how to put in it, and what are you going to float it? Are you going to mix it in? I mean, no one wants runny spaghetti, right? You want spaghetti that's moist, but if you put too much water, so how do you know how much water? So we'll talk about that when we go over this, okay? All right, so let's, all right, so today, yes.
This is almost related to what you were just talking about, that's why I bring it up now. But it's opposite, so I wanted to bring it up when you finished. So the beautiful thing about what you're doing is like red onions, freeze-dried. You have, like if I put it in a pork canning jar and vacuum seal it in there, I'd have ounces in there. But I've been buying some exotic supplements and things that we don't grow ourselves, and it comes in a powdered form. And if I had my freeze-dried onions powder to crunch down, I could put 2 pounds of freeze-dried onions in there, which probably would have been 10 or 15 pounds of onions in 1 quart jar. But it would be a powder. But if I were to put it in soup, it'll be a thickener. You won't have the luxury of seeing slices of red onions, but I would have a whole lot more food in a canning jar.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mention that because that's my thoughts, and my question is very general. Would you share your thoughts on that?
No, and that goes back to, so if you didn't hear online, what he's talking about is really boils down to the different ways you store it. You still get the benefits. However, you could store it, you get more per square inch if you powder it versus if you slice it versus different ways of preparing. Am I right?
Yes.
So that goes back to just thinking about how you're going to utilize the different foods you do. Okay. All right. So let's jump into eggs and dairy and everything breakfast. And so I know we've talked about eggs before. It comes up every single time. So that'll be a good discussion to have. Let's talk about milk first. Now, this is not how you pre-freeze your milk. Okay. So if you've been to my classes before, I pre-freeze everything. Why do I do that? Do you have to do that? You don't have to, right? And I say that lightly because I think you all but have to, even though there's some scenarios, but let's talk about that, what those exceptions are. So I pre-freeze everything. Why? For a couple reasons. For example, I got batches and batches of milk going on right now, and I pre-freeze that because my freezer freezes it faster than my freeze dryer. My freeze dryer, if you don't pre-freeze your food or your liquids, then it's going to add anywhere from 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, depending on the density of your food, to your cycle before it kicks in and starts doing the freeze-dry cycle. So I'm kind of cheap, and we here in Utah, we spend about, or we pay about anywhere from 11 to 13 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, the freeze dryers take anywhere from 1 to 1.5 kilowatts per hour. So if you're adding 6, 7, 8 hours onto your freeze cycle, then you just added $1. Doesn't sound like much, but it adds up. I mean, you figure, if you have one machine and you do a batch a day, it adds up. So that's why I don't do it. My freezer's much more efficient. I can get more cycles in my freeze dryer if I have it pre-frozen and just switch my trays. Any questions on that? Yeah.
First off, I don't have room in my freezer to put trays. Second off, I've been like blending my eggs, and then as far as, I'm concerned about the raw egg contamination with stuff. And so the easiest thing that I've been doing is blending up my eggs, going out and pouring it into my trays.
In your freeze dryer? Yeah. You can.
That's part of why we're here tonight. We're newbies at this, and so I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it.
So I'm going to come back to that in a second. I got this one more slide, and then I'm going to show you what happens if you don't pre-freeze, or what can happen. So this is what you're doing. You're taking your milk or your eggs, whatever it is, and you're just pouring it right into your freeze dryer. That is okay if that's all you got. Okay. If you have a freezer and you can stack your trays in with your tray stackers like this and have it frozen overnight, best scenario. If up here this is breast milk, I didn't want to leave out all kinds of milk. In fact, and I threw that in there because I sold a machine to a guy that's starting a new company for breast milk, like a freeze-dried breast milk bank, and an American fork. So, you know, and if you have kids, grandchildren that want to freeze their breast milk, it's easy peasy. So you take these packets, cut off the top after it's frozen, just lay them on your tray, and then freeze dry it in the package. Just make sure you cut the end off of it. And then when you're done, you have it all powdered in the bag, and you can put it in a more of a permanent bag. But you don't have to, you can keep it isolated in the bag forms. Does that make sense? Very easy. So if you've ever done candy, like some of the chews, where you cut off just the end, anybody do that on candy? Same thing. So just cut it right at the top where the zip seal is, or you can just open the zip seal. Sometimes they close on you, so you have to put something in it, but it's frozen. So just open it up and let the machine do its job, and it'll be a bag of powder. So.
We can get the moisture out of the milk with it still wrapped in a package.
Yes. You got to have the end open.
Well, I understand that, but that seems like it's a larger, you're probably talking that size.
Works great.
Does it take longer?
Nope. Nope. I'm sorry?
Because I was freezing the back and trying to get it out.
Now you can do something like this, and you can get other silicone molds that are bigger that hold like a serving for a child, and do it that way, and it's not so bad. But the bag is really the easiest way to go because you're already using the bag. Yeah, yeah. If you want to do that. For regular milk, it's so much easier to do it. Just pour it in your tray. Yeah. Yeah. So, yes.
Well, anyways, I thought it was much faster. It dropped about 6 hours off of my dry time when I popped them all out. So I pre-froze them, popped them all out, and just put them on the trays and froze them that way.
Yep. They will
But-
freeze a lot faster. Or
Okay.
freeze dry a lot faster.
So if you take those bags and you open them up, like the breast milk bags, and actually open them and like they're still in there, they're going to freeze into that shape anyway. But if you open them up more, they will freeze faster. They'll freeze either way, but they'll freeze faster the more that you have exposed.
Yep.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. The more exposure. Now, you only have a few ounces of breast milk in a particular bag, right? It's not like you have 4 cups. So it goes pretty fast. So if you cut it and lay them, now what I do is I will take, what I do, but because my daughter-in-law lives with us and she nurses, so whenever she has overage, then we freeze dry. So what I do on the tray, see if I can kind of, well, let's just exaggerate a little bit. Let's just say that this is one of those. So what I do is it'll lay flat, and I will put them like this and stack them down so that, evaporation, right? So it's easily drawn out of the bag. So if you have it like this, where the hole is down, it's not going to be as efficient. So that's how I do it. Okay, so if you don't pre-freeze, or if you don't get your dairy products frozen, this is what could happen. It'll bubble on you. What's that? No danger, but it's sure a mess to clean up.
We've done 2 batches of eggs. And in the last batch we did, there was one little section about this big that bubbled up like that.
Hmm.
Not the whole thing, but just in the middle. So we did 2 batches of eggs, and the last one tray had a small section that bubbled up like that, but not the whole tray. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be unhealthy to use.
No, it's not unhealthy. Um, and we're going to do eggs next, but it's the same principle. So on your dairy products, and cream is this way. If you do heavy whipping cream, if you freeze dry that, sour cream doesn't, but any type of milk, not almond milk, that's not really milk, right? Is it? Right, because you can't milk a coconut, right? So, but this is what happens, and this was actually a client. I got called out there to fix their machine, and they said, this is what happened. We were doing cream. And I said, well, did you pre-freeze? And they said, yeah, we pre-froze it for 2 hours. And it's like, well, was it frozen? And they said, well, we did flip it over and it was kind of runny on the backside. And so let me kind of explain how your machine works, because your machine doesn't know if it's really frozen. It goes by temperature. So your machine, if you look at the configuration, so if you hit your customize button and it brings up all those stats, it'll say initial freeze temperature, and most of it will say -10. That's what the default is. So what it's trying to do is get you down to 10 below zero so that the machine will go, okay, I'm cold enough, let's go. But what happens is, if it gets to 10 below, and a lot of the older machines only have one sensor, and that's on shelf number 2. So if you have other, thicker pores or something inside on your other trays, it could not be quite there yet, like this one, to where it started to bubble because it wasn't frozen solid. So that's what happens. It thinks it's frozen, and so it starts the freeze dry process, but it's not actually frozen. So a lot of people, and this is for egg people too, is they say, well, I don't pre-freeze, and I've never had it happen. Well, great, you guys are awesome. Blessings come, right? But other people, they've frozen, and it has bubbled up on them. And there's another reason for that on eggs, and we'll talk about that when we get there. So dairy products, and I'm going to throw in here too, things like orange juice. Any juices that you buy, do not. You risk having a big mess if you freeze dry those juices, because of the sugars in them. They will bubble. They will bubble up and make a mess. So don't buy don't buy orange juice, pour it in your tray, freeze it, and attempt to freeze dry it, because there's a high likelihood you're going to get a cotton candy type mess everywhere. Okay?
Is there a way to do it?
Is there a way to do it?
Yes.
Not with a high percentage of success. I mean, you can do it.
Very deep pre-freeze, maybe?
What's that?
A very deep pre-freeze?
Even still, I mean, 10 below is pretty cold. So the problem is when your heating elements kick in, it's heating at 125, 135, which in a vacuum boils. And so when you boil that sugar, it boils over.
Maybe a slower process by putting some resistance on that heating element to have it heat less?
Well, you can try anything you want, but my recommendation is don't do fruit juices. And what I mean by fruit juices, ones that you get from the store. If you want to squeeze, and I've had some success at squeezing oranges and lemons and limes and doing some powders like that, but even still, sometimes they'll bubble. So it's just my warning. You can try it. Let me know if if you either way what happens, but it's tough.
Lemons and limes should work just great. Very low sugar content.
Yeah, lemons and limes work pretty well. I do a lot of just sliced fruit, and it works well. And if anybody done oranges, just sliced oranges, you'll get little bubbles around them of the juice. It doesn't boil or doesn't blow up, but you'll get these little, they look like moles, right? You know, on your fruit because of that juice is bubbling. Yeah. Yeah. So yes.
So you're saying if you were going to do juices, fresh squeezed is the only thing you would recommend trying if you're going to try it?
If you're going to try it, do fresh squeeze. But again, especially orange juice is particularly volatile.
Okay. And I didn't think you could do cream at all. You can do cream if you freeze it first?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, let's not get confused about if you can and how long it'll last, because sometimes we have in our minds that everything lasts 25 to 30 years, right? Well, that's not the case. And all other factors aside, certain things will freeze dry, but only last a year or 2 years. And it all depends on what it is. Hamburger's probably a easy one, right? If you freeze dry hamburger, you could do it and it would last 20 years, and I could do it and it could last 5. And we did the same thing. But the way we prepped it is totally different, right? Does everybody understand that concept? That different things can last. You can freeze dry them; they just may not last as long. Heavy whipping cream, you're probably good for a year or two. Lots of fat in it, but it freeze dries really well. Meats with fat, if you render those meats, they can store a long time. But how well did you render yours versus mine versus their, you know what I'm saying? So it's not so much the item as it is how well you prepped it and freeze dried it. What's that? Render. So rendering is the act of breaking down all the fats. So when you have sausage, ground sausage in a pan, you get all that oils and grease coming out of it, right? All those cells are giving up everything that's in there, so you're bursting all those cells. So that's what allows you to freeze dry and store sausage longer than just having raw sausage, because you can freeze dry raw sausage, just may not last very long because you can't get it's like the fruits that have skins on them, grapes, blueberries, you can't get the water out of it. That same concept is with meat. So my meats, when I freeze dry them, I'll put them on a Traeger because it's a slow process, but it takes all of that out, all of that water, and breaks down those fat cells, and then your meats will last longer the more you render or remove all of those oils and grease. Yep. Okay.
One thing with juices, it's less efficient than dilute it.
Yeah.
You got
We can't
water.
hear him
Yeah,
now.
what did he say?
Yeah. So the comment he said is, if you dilute juices, then it's less efficient, but yet at the end of the day, you still get what was in the juice, and it may not bubble as much because you've diluted the sugars. But again, I wouldn't know what to tell you as far as if you take a quart of orange juice, do you dilute it? I've never done it. Have you done it? Is it about 50-50? So I'll have to try that. Yeah, and there's a lot of things.
I didn't, but when it was all done, there wasn't much left in the tray.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, and that's why I do fruit. As far as like oranges, I'll slice them, because for breakfast you can eat that whole thing. I eat the whole thing, rind and all. Anybody go ooh? You would think it was bitter. It's not. Try it. Try it. It's awesome. Peel on. Slice them about a 1/4 inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch. Slice them, and then just lay them out on your tray, freeze dry them, and then just eat them like candy. Yep. You have the nutritional value. You don't get the bitterness of the rind. It's easier. You don't have to peel them. You don't have to do all that stuff, because once you peel an orange and you start slicing it or, breaking it apart, then you're getting juice everywhere, and then that boils on you and bubbles up. But if you leave it in the rind, so what I do is I take my oranges, slice them in half, and then slice, and then lay them out on the tray like cards. And you don't get all the juice everywhere. You retain all the nutrients, and it's awesome. Try it. It's really good. Yeah, I just like dominoes. Limes and lemons. Yep. Okay. Yes.
You talked about some foods last longer than others freeze-dried. How do you know when a freeze-dried food is no longer good?
Have you?
Will you repeat it? I didn't catch it.
Yeah. So the question was, how do you know, really, if what's in your bag is good or not? Doesn't matter how long it is. It could have been a year, 2 years, 3 years, 25 years. How do you know if it's good? You'll know. You'll open that bag and it's like, whoo, that's not Dior. It's Corel number 5. It doesn't smell good.
Just like food in your fridge or anywhere else.
Yeah. If you've smelled something that's rancid, like if there's meat in there, you'll know. I mean, it's like, oh, that does not smell good. If it's good, then you will smell the seasonings. The fragrance won't be quite as intense because there's no moisture, right? So you're not getting those molecules other than the seasonings. So it'll smell relatively fresh. You're good to go. But if you've bagged something with a little moisture in it and it started growing on you and it doesn't look fuzzy, but it smells bad, you probably, and if you don't notice, then when you add water to it, you'll really know, because it will really come out and go, whew, that's not good. Okay. All right. So some of the things in dairy that you can do, milk, almond milk, cheese, yogurt, sour cream, cottage cheese. Now I do these, I just grab these little bags. So I get, and these are great for breakfast. My little granddaughter that lives with us, she just loves these. And so I just grab these off the counter. So this is Greek yogurt. I don't like yogurt. Most yogurts are just candy. It's just sugar. But Greek yogurt has the probiotics and the things that are actually a little bit more healthy. So I take that, and if you've had Greek yogurt, what's it taste like? It's kind of, yeah, it's like sour cream. That's probably the best. But if you take ground limes, ground blueberries, and ground freeze-dried strawberry powder with a little bit of monk fruit, these are like candy. And you have the benefits of the health benefits of Greek yogurt without the aftertaste. Okay. So does everybody know what monk fruit is? So monk fruit is a sweetener. It's not a stevia. It's not stevia from a plant, but it's not one of those imitation sweeteners. And so that's why I use it, because most people with allergies or something like that, or they want to watch their sugar intake and eat it without any problem. So yes,
Did you put those in some type of
a piper.
Like, yeah, and then just dip them.
Yeah, and that's what I do.
Icing thing.
So the way I make these is, and I'm getting better at it. I'm no cake decorator, but I use a cake piper. Yeah, yeah. I won't let you see them too close, but I am getting better at it. But I have these up here. If you want one after, then you can taste one, and we'll share those with you. But yeah, but that. No, they're not. They're hand done. So you've seen a cake piper, right? It's icing thing. So that's what I do is I'll mix it up in a bowl. I'll put my sweetener and my powders. So whether it's strawberries that I've already freeze dried and grind them up, and I'll just mix it up and just pipe out and dot. I wish I had one of those big machines with all the. I don't yet.
What Greek yogurt do you use? Because they're not all created equal.
They're not. I let my wife grab it, and we get it at Trader Joe's. It's just the Greek yogurt. I can't remember the brand that they have, but we love Trader Joe's. Who doesn't like Trader Joe's, right? Okay. The things here, let's talk about the cheese just a little bit. Cheese is kind of not a hard one, but cheese is really good to freeze dry and put away because it has a lot of nutrition in it and protein. And I love cheese. Who doesn't love cheese, right? So who has rehydrated cheese? How'd it go? Weird. Shredded or sliced? Okay. And did you shred it, or did you buy pre-shredded cheese? Okay. Did it come out mushy? Okay. Yeah. Just incorporate in.
We'll just set this out.
Okay. Melted? Okay. So different cheeses and brands, it's one of those things you just have to find a brand that works for you, because different brands are different quality of cheeses with different ratios of milks and fats and things like that. So in general, here's how I rehydrate cheese. So it's easy enough to freeze-dried cheese. So if you buy the bags at Costco, they have the 2 double bags of different types of cheese, spread it on a tray, freeze dries really well. To rehydrate that, just take some cheese and put a paper towel, a wet, moist paper towel down on a plate, put a layer of the freeze-dried cheese on it, put a moist paper towel on top, and if you wanted to layer it up a couple layers, do so, and then put it in the fridge overnight and let it sit. When you freeze dry, you got to have some patience sometimes. Sometimes we want to add water and it's ready to eat. But with cheese, if you want a really nice rehydrated cheese that you can't tell that it was rehydrated, do that, put it in the fridge, and let it sit overnight. And it should be really good. Now, it takes a little bit. Sometimes you get the towelette too moist, so it gets a little sticky, or not moist enough and it's still a little crunchy. You just have to kind of gauge it. There's no recipe. So, and the exact same way for sliced cheese. Now, the sliced cheese, just make sure it's the same slice as the same thickness and no thicker than a pre-sliced that you get in packages. So you don't want a slice that's 1/8 of an inch thick, you know. So do the same thing. Wet a moist paper towel, put a couple, usually about 4 slices of cheese, another moist paper towel, and just layer it up. And in the morning, it'll be great. Okay? And then if it doesn't work well, switch brands or try different brands. But if you find one that works well, then the Sargento brand works really well for me. Great Values sometimes. Kirkland does pretty well. I'm sorry?
Any cheeses to stay away from, like some of the softer cheeses?
Yes, I mean, mozzarella is okay, but I don't rehydrate mozzarella. So if I use it for that, I'm usually using it for cooking, and so I just throw it in my recipe, and then add a little bit more moisture to compensate for it, and then I don't have to worry about it. So usually it's mostly cheddar, Colby, and pepper jack is what I'm rehydrating. But anything else, I'm usually just cooking with it. But the softer cheeses are much more difficult. Okay. Other things, sour cream, cottage cheese, all rehydrates really well. So you just kind of have to get your bearings on that. Add a little bit on the sour cream, especially. Start like you're baking. Start with a little bit of water, and then just keep adding a little bit more and a little bit more until you get the consistency. If you know what the consistency is and you add it all at once, it seems like it doesn't really adhere to itself and it sweats, or it doesn't keep its form. So if you add it a little bit at a time and work its way up, it works a lot better. And surprisingly, cottage cheese does great. So if you like cottage cheese, it will never see my storage room, never, because I don't like cottage cheese. But if you like cottage cheese, it rehydrates and freeze dries really well. And then yes,
For cottage cheese, pour out this cottage cheese, dehydrated little nodules, whatever you call it, and you're gonna put them in a cup, and you're gonna spray them. You're gonna soak them in water. What are you gonna do?
to rehydrate them. That's your question, is how do you rehydrate cottage cheese? Same thing, just like if you're making pudding, and those little nodules, they will be there. It's awesome. So I don't eat it though.
Sour cream, slowly add and keep stirring.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
think
So
it makes it come apart.
works great. Use a fork. Don't use a spoon. It seems to work better if you use a fork than a spoon. But some people will use a whisk. But seems like it incorporates better if you have something with that kind of gives it the agitation thing. Yes.
I had one more question on the cheeses. Have you had better luck with grating your own or shredded already shredded, or does it make a difference?
Okay, good question. So the question was, if you use pre-shredded cheese, which we know has a lot of starch in it, right? That's why it doesn't stick it together in the bag. So it has starch in it already. If you buy a brick of cheese and you shred it yourself, you're probably going to get a little bit more of stickiness, and it's going to clump together more because it doesn't have that starch. So I don't like the starch in my cheese, but to freeze dry, I do freeze dry the pre-shredded cheese because it doesn't stick together. I've done the other way before, but you have to be really careful when you're shredding it and spreading on your tray that you're not getting a ball. You know what I'm saying? But Gardeners? No, I don't think so. Okay, ready? Here we go. Eggs. Has anybody in here had an egg fail other than me?
I had to run them for 2.5 days.
You shouldn't have to do that, but
It wasn't pre-frozen.
okay, there you go. So the biggest fail that I had wasn't so much in the freeze drying process as getting my eggs to the freeze dryer. And I actually so I cracked my eggs, whipped them up, and had my tray on the counter, dumped my 4 cups in, picked it up, and quickly realized that my balance and my agility, it wasn't as good as, so where I started out with 18 eggs, by the time I got it to my freezer, I had a bunch of eggs slosh over down the front of the freezer, and when I pushed it in, the little tidal wave washed over the back and down the back side of the freezer. So it makes a mess. And when you pour eggs down a frozen freezer, you almost have to defrost to get it cleaned up. So what I'm saying is, on your eggs, if you're pre-freezing, put your tray in first and then put your eggs in the tray. Don't overload your trays. So how many cups of eggs do you put in a medium per tray? 4 cups. Okay, that's usually between 16 and 18 eggs per tray. So you should be able to put, if you have a 4 and not a pro, you can put 60 eggs on 4 trays. Okay. If you have a large, how many cups of volume do you put on your large tray? 6. Do 6. Okay. Anybody have an extra large? So 14 cups. Didn't hold very much. 14 cups. Okay, so, and that goes for all liquids. So if you keep it in those areas, 4 cups, 6 cups, 14 cups. Anybody have a small one? A small freeze dryer? I don't talk a lot about small ones because no one really has one. Okay, so pre-freeze. Now, eggs are the only thing I do raw. For a reason. Anybody not do raw eggs? You haven't done raw eggs? So I do lots and lots, and I have tons of raw eggs. They freeze dry really well. They're full of protein, and if they're for your food storage, they're very easily cooked. So if you can imagine, the power's been out 2 weeks, and you're hungry, and you want some protein. Well, most proteins take quite a bit of resource. Eggs do not. And so that's why I have lots of eggs. I have 3,500 eggs in my home food storage, because they're just the reason I said. They're easily cooked and they're great nutrition.
If you say done raw, do you just break them open and put the eggs, including the yolk, on a tray? Or do you have to blend them?
Okay, that's the next point, because any bakers here? What do you use egg whites for? Right, and what do they do for you? Why do you put them in cakes? Because they make fluffy, right? You don't want to make fluffy in a freeze dryer, because you're going to get what the picture, it's going to bubble everywhere. So if you're going to do raw eggs, make sure you beat them like your children. I mean, you just make sure that they're with love. So what I do is I use an emulsion blender, so a little wand blender, and I incorporate the yolks and the whites really well. If you have some of those egg whites floating around, they will bubble. So that's, some people say, well, I just use a whisk. Well, you must have Popeye forearms. I don't. And, it works. And some people, they say, oh, I just use a fork and it works fine. That's great. but I'm not taking no chances. I've seen eggs go Mary Poppins all over the inside, and it's to clean all that stuff. It's tough. So so use a blender for raw eggs. If you cook scrambled eggs, for example, what I have in this bag is your treat for this evening. Is I scramble my eggs, but when you scramble your eggs, remove them from the heat when they still glisten. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, next time you're cooking scrambled eggs and you're stirring them and they're starting to get done, they will still look a little wet. Remove them. Not runny, but just wet. If they don't glisten any longer, they're overcooked. So you want to remove them a little. I could use the word al dente from pasta to eggs. You want them a little bit moist. You want them moist, okay? They will, when you rehydrate them, they will taste nice and soft. They won't be rubbery, and it'll be beautiful. Because remember, what we want to eat every day in our food storage or any other food that we have is what we eat every day. So we don't want to have to say, oh, this food storage stuff, it's tough, right? Okay. And then, yeah, so if you overcook them, they will be a little, they'll taste fine. They'll just be rubbery. So if you don't pre-freeze, you could add a significant amount. We talked about that already. And incorporating your whites and yolks, it could bubble up. Okay. Any questions on eggs? Anybody scared to death doing eggs? Shouldn't be. Yes.
I think probably the bubbling might be coming from including some air when you mix it up. It could easily have little air bubbles would expand.
Well, possibly, but mostly it's those egg whites. Those egg whites are not incorporated in the egg yolks, and they temper each other. So if you mix them really well, you'll never have that problem. Okay? All right. We talked about cheese a little bit, shredded or sliced, rehydrating it. So for the quantity, same thing. So if you have about 4 cups of cheese on a medium, 6 cups of cheese. Now cheese you can stack high. So if you have, just because there's a lot of air through it, right? So you don't have to worry about, you know, overloading your trays because there's not a lot of moisture in cheese. It'll just take a little bit longer to get the heat up to those, the top if you get it too much. Okay, so I am going to start this over here, and I hope that I can do this while we talk. So we'll get the water boiling, and then we'll rehydrate that. So I love doing meals. And a lot of people are intimidated doing meals just because they haven't done it yet. Meals are, to me, one of the easiest things to do and have ready in your arsenal. And that's why I don't store anything that's raw other than eggs. I don't do any raw meat. I don't do anything that's not cooked. Why do you think that is? Milk? Well, the cow cooked it. Pasteurized milk. Yeah, I haven't done raw milk straight from the cow. I should try it, but it's hard to get raw milk nowadays. Anybody have a connection for raw milk? Do you? Have you tried it?
Drying it, but the raw milk is wonderful.
Oh yeah, I grew up on raw milk.
It's much more healthy.
Yeah, so on your raw milk, yeah.
Is it local? Where is it?
West Jordan.
Oh, I want the address.
5600 west, 7400 south. Utah National Meat.
So on the raw milk, when you freeze dry it, just mix it well. If it's been in your fridge for a day or so and that cream's kind of rising to the top, make ice cream and then freeze dry the rest. So what we're going to have today, the sample I have for you to try, is what we sell, what we call breakfast scramble. So what it has is shredded hash browns, sausage, scrambled eggs, and cheese. Very simple, but yet lots of protein, and hopefully it tastes just like your mama made, right? So you can do other meals too. Scrambles. We also do a scramble, and it's kind of elevated a little bit more. It has diced potatoes with green peppers and golden peppers and bell pepper, different types of peppers, sausage and cheese. Sometimes we do a bacon one. So if you have a question on the ingredients, raise your hand, because when I say bacon, some people go, bacon? You can't do bacon. But if you go to Costco or others and get the packaged bacon crumbles, it's been rendered. In fact, some of it's not even bacon, I don't think. Tastes like bacon. So use that. Don't use your own bacon. Yes?
I gather that all those are pre-cooked.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not undercooking them. I'm cooking them correctly. So they glisten. Yeah. So, so there's things like smoothie powders and snacks for breakfast. So we also use the forms, and we will get and blend a variety of different fruits, and then we'll pour them in here, and then you'll get little squares for, you can either put them in the morning, you're rushing out the door, you can put 4 or 5 of those in a blender with a little bit of milk and blend yourself up a little smoothie. You can just eat them. My grandkids just eat them like candy, and it's just fruit, and so they're good for you. So a lot of different things you can use the molds for, and I do like the molds a lot for different things. They're a little bit more work, but especially if you're looking at proportion sizes, they're really good. And then fruit, we talked about, slicing the fruit. On the fruit though, just make sure when you're freeze drying different fruit that you're trying to keep them the same. In other words, mangoes are very dense. If you have 2 trays of mangoes and 2 trays of strawberries, and you have your strawberries on your sensor tray, which is tray number 2, your mangoes may not be done because it's heating based on what it needs to heat the strawberries. So with the mangoes, you may need a little bit more heat longer. So they may not be as done if they're big at all. So if you're buying mixed fruit from Costco, they have the 4-pound bags with different fruits. In there, you will get whole strawberries and blueberries and pineapple chunks and different things. So I've done those a lot just for fruit. What I do is I dump them out on a big cutting board, and I'll cut them all up. I'll cut the strawberries in half and make sure that the mango, because sometimes the mango pieces are pretty big, so cut those up proportionately to how dense they are compared to everything else, and they work great. And you could do a yogurt and fruit smoothie, or just rehydrate some yogurt and then put some freeze-dried fruit in it, mix it up, let it sit for a minute, and it's delicious. Things like that. So if you're thinking about food storage and what do I eat, and how do I make more of a meal versus, I'm just going to eat that one singular thing and that one singular thing. Things like that make it really easy. All right, and then let's not forget the babies. So we do a lot of baby food. We don't retail baby food yet, but we do a lot of squash and fruit-based foods. and they're so easy, and we just put them in little individual packages like this. And so for my grandkids, if they ever either come over or we need something to eat in the time of need, then we have a lot of really nutritious, easy, just single serving, mix them up with a little water, and off they're eating. So don't forget about the little ones in your food storage, and just and you can make a lot of baby food with just a little bit of, yes.
What are you putting that squash in bags, or what are you putting it in?
So I have little Mylar bags. They look just like that, the silver, and they're about this big. And so I'll take like butternut squash and I'll bake it, and then I'll just dig it out, mince it up, put it on my tray, freeze dry it, and then grind it up, and then put it in little serving packets. So when you go to use it, you just put a little bit of water, mix it up into a paste, maybe a little butter or a little salt, and then they eat it like crazy. And there's no preservatives. Yes. So the question is, what size of oxygen packets to use? So you can get 50 cc oxygen packets and put in them. If you do anything bigger than that, I mean, it could be it's overkill, but I mean, you can only go down to 50. So that works good. Now, if you want, you could make a little bit bigger bags, you know, if they really like that flavor. Because, for example, the bags I use have a zipper seal on the top. So let's just say you had a bag this big full of squash. Then you could take out a serving for a child or two and then just zip it back up and stick it back in the cupboard. And it will not go bad for a year, depending on what it is. But I mean, we have stuff like this that we just put it right back, that we've opened, and we use it frequently. Okay? Am I whistling yet? Okay. What's that?
Ziploc pouches for sale somewhere?
You mean these? What do you mean? Zip? Yeah. So yeah, I sell these on my website. So if you go to wasatchfreezedry.com, you can buy. You get 100 bags for $25, I think. So, okay. I don't know if you can take a look at this.
It's beautiful.
So if you haven't had freeze-dried food before, if you've had freeze-dried food before, and go, oh well, that looks really nice.
You do these things up separate.
What's that?
You do the different things like potatoes, eggs, sausage, doing separate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Everything in this bag is separate, and I do that for a couple reasons. And you can incorporate it together. It just takes it's just a different texture.
Can you get right out of the bag? I'll be okay.
Yeah, I like my own cooking, right? So, cooked eggs. So here's the trick. Now, when you eat freeze-dried food, okay. So the trick here is, if this was in my normal bags, I would know exactly how much to put in it. But since, sorry, how much is one serving? So, in those bags there, if you get my breakfast scramble, then there's 2 servings in one bag, so it's enough for 2 people. And that's by design. In this bag, I just put some in it. So hopefully it serves that many. Well, someone needs to run next door then, because okay, so when I do that, I'll take it and I'll pinch it like this so I get as much air out of it, and then I'll just zip it closed. And then when I rehydrate anything like that, I put it down, I give it the old Swedish massage to try to get it even, right? So there's not a big thicker, and let it sit like that. And I'll let it sit like that for a few more questions, and then we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
So then, you said you need to do the eggs raw, but the eggs here are cooked. So it's two separate processes.
Yeah. So my raw eggs, if I were to make scrambled eggs, for example, I just cooked for 30 people. We took a young men's group up to Flaming Gorge, and I cooked for 30 people myself. And I just took a bag of eggs, freeze-dried eggs, and just mixed up scrambled eggs. As soon as you add water to them, they're just raw eggs. Poured them on a big flat grill and had awesome scrambled eggs. For the meals, they are pre-cooked and scrambled already. Yes.
So, on your breakfast casserole, you freeze-dried your potatoes, your eggs, sausage, and cheese. And then you just mix it all together.
No, not quite. I did do them, so on this grill, I fry up all my shredded potatoes. I have my scrambled eggs going here, and then I have my sausage over here. And then once those three things are done, I'll put my, in a big bowl, I'll put my hash browns, and then my sausage, and then my eggs. And I'll mix it up and I'll let it sit and cool a little bit. Because when I put my cheese on it, I don't want my cheese to melt. And so if you look close enough, all the cheese was just, look like freeze-dried cheese. So what I do is I let it sit and cool a little bit so that it doesn't melt the cheese. And then I'll stir in all my cheese and then put it on my trays and then put them in the freezer. And in the freezer. And then once it's frozen, then I put them in the freeze dryer. And then, so what you saw came off the trays as it is. Okay?
Do you render your sausage?
Very well. Butter. Yeah.
And then
Sparingly? Well, you're cooking that butter, so you're rendering the butter as well. So, and it's a good point you bring up because a lot of people will say, well, you can't freeze dry butter. Yeah, so you can't take butter and just put it in your freeze dryer and expect to get some butter powder, right? I mean, it's too much fat. But if you're cooking with things, oil, we use avocado oil or extra virgin olive oil. And, if there's something that's really oily, so let's go back to the sausage. This is how I do sausage. And again, this probably, and I don't know for sure, I think my food will last longer than anybody else's. But sausage has fat in it. And if you don't render it well, then, you're just shortening the life of it. How much, you don't know. So here's how we cook our hamburger, same thing. So we have a slanted grill and we cook it on a large slanted grill. So the grease is continually being pulled off. That helps. Once it's done, we will take it off and put it on drying towels. And these are, think of them as similar to what do you call them? Well, they're a drying towel, kind of thick cheesecloth. So, and you can do that. Well, let's use paper towels because most people don't have drying towels. So, paper towels work just as well. So, put like a double layer of paper towels down on a cutting board, and if let's say you're doing 1 pound of sausage, take that sausage, put it on your paper towels, spread it out. Take another couple layers of paper towels, put it on top. Pull it up into a ball and squeeze it. And you'll see you'll see the grease bubbling through your hands. And then change your paper towels out and then put a fresh batch in. Take your rolling pin, roll it. Okay? That's the key. Why? And some people say, well, I rinse mine. You know anybody that rinses their meat? You rinse your meat? So here's why I don't rinse meat is if you have a chunk of hamburger or sausage as big as your thumb and you rinse it, you're only rinsing the outside. There's still grease on the inside. So if you squeegee it with your rolling pin, then you're going to squeegee all of that oil out of it. Does that make sense? And you won't leave that that oil and stuff inside of that ball. That's why I don't rinse. Yes. Online question.
Sausage. Do you have a favorite brand of sausage?
Pork.
Yep. Good one. From Trader Joe's, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
We use different types of sausage from different companies, and we'll get our sausage from local restaurant supplies that we like. U.S. chefs down on downtown, they have some good sausage, but usually most sausages are about the same. So if you're shopping at a grocery store, buy a pound or two of your favorite sausage and know that you're just going to have to work it and to get the life out of it that you want. Yes.
I bought a container of powdered butter, and out of curiosity, and it confuses me because if you freeze-dry butter, you're just getting the water out of it, but it's still a fat and oil, and that's wet. But the powdered butter is dry powder. What is it?
So just flip that over. So if you Thrive, everybody know what Thrive is? They're in American Fork. They put out cans of powdered butter. That's what I buy for long-term storage. What is it? It's butter that's gone through a different process than what you can do with a home freeze dryer. That's a commercial product. It's done in a different way, of which some are proprietary. So I can't tell you how it's done because I don't know myself. But depending on what brand you use, they've used chemicals to break it down and make it into butter.
Got an additive that encapsulates the oil?
I don't know. I'd just be guessing at this point, but it is different. You can't do butter in the Harvest Right home machines, but commercially, it gets done. So, yeah.
The shredded potatoes, do you cook those before you put them in the casserole?
Yes.
How do you cook them?
On the stove.
Frying pan?
Yes. So we have a big grill.
Yeah.
I'm on one today, aren't I?
Yes, you are.
So
You do each individual and then put it together.
yeah, so we buy shredded potatoes just like if you were to go to the store and get the bags of shredded potatoes. They're already blanched, so they're partially cooked anyway. So I like to put a texture on them, and so we cook them up and add flavor to them because they're just potatoes. So some salt, some butter, It's a little onion powder and give them a little flavor, and then before we start marinating everything. So yeah, just buy those bags of shredded potatoes.
So
Over here.
essentially, you've cooked it as if you could serve it for breakfast. Instead, you're just putting it in your freeze dry, or you're freezing.
Yep. And then we rehydrate it, and we're going to serve it to you right now. So I better taste it to see how. Yes.
I want to make onion powder. How do you do that?
Onion powder. You can make any seasoning almost by yourself. Onion powders, just chop up your onions, and I would use multiple flavors of onions depending on what you like. You could use yellow, white, and purple onions combined, and then freeze dry them in whatever ratio you like. I mean, there's no recipe out there. Freeze dry it, and then use a little mill it up into a powder.
What's the mill?
What's a what?
What is the mill?
What's a meal? Yeah, something that has really, like if you have like a tea, yeah, like a coffee mill or something that has little blades that really grind it.
So how do I make
A blender won't work. What's that?
What machine would make a large batch with big production?
Well, I would, production, well, I'm not sure how much production you're talking about, but if you're wanting to make a pretty substantial amount, we use the bullet for a lot of our powders that we make.
A case of penny jars at a time.
I don't know what to tell you on that much production because I haven't done that much into the spices.
Yes,
Yeah,
but that's the plan.
yeah. So you'd want something, you'd want to look at something that mixes it, why it blends it. Because if you use a regular blender, it's just going to suck that powder down and just pack it in the bottom. It doesn't work for that type of stuff. So that's why we use a bullet. It's called a bullet blender. It's about that big around. It has about that tall. We put a bunch of stuff in it, and it's for smoothies, and so you can shake it, and it works really well. Now, if you want to take your Vitamix, do this, you can do that. What's that? Yeah. Yeah. If you're looking to like retail something or sell that stuff, I mean, that's a different process,
No,
but
my own food storage.
oh, if it's for yourself, then I would I would make a batch, but then the rest I would leave raw, like your onions. I would just freeze dry them, put them in a big bag, and then make it as you used it, and not have like a 5-gallon bucket of onion powder. You know what I'm saying? Have a 5-gallon bucket of onions, freeze dried onions. That's what I would do. Because then I could use those onions in casseroles and other things. But if you make it into powder, you're pretty stuck on what you're going to use it for.
Right, but I could have a whole lot more onions in a case of penny jars than if I had it loose
Yeah.
and fluffy.
Yeah. I mean, that's the decision you're going to have to make is, do I want versatility or do I want to put as much onions in a...
First slide, doesn't it? Actually, it's the second slide you showed, where you talked about how you're going to prepare it and how you're going to use it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes.
At Costco on 21st South, you can get big bags of minced onions in their vegetable room. And you can extract that.
Yeah, a great point. So she said the Costco locally, the business Costco down on 21st South, you can buy a lot of, it's where the restaurants go to buy. We buy a lot of things too, and there, because they're already prepped and ready to go. So, okay, let's, I can answer questions as we go, but I'm going to dish up a little bit for you, and we'll see if you like it.
You ever put onions in your breakfast casserole?
I don't on this one. At home I do because a lot of people don't like onions, and so when you do certain things like this, you have to kind of weigh the masses versus the right. Yeah, and I brought salt here, so we don't put a lot of salt in it because it's such a personal thing. It does enhance the flavor, but it also adds sodium to your diet. So as a manufacturer, you don't want to. If I was to put salt the way my wife does it, I would add eggs to this and not the other way around. We eat lots of salt, so.
If you want to put them on these trays, we can pass them up.
Yeah, actually, yeah. All right. Yeah, we'll just go like that. In fact, we could probably just,
Have you ever done sausage gravy?
yeah. Uh-huh.
As long as you've rendered the sausage the way you say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's all about how fast or, how well you do the rendering. And it could differ batch to batch. So yeah, let's just put those out as fast as we can. So imagine we just had an earthquake yesterday and we're all huddled together in a local church. And or you're up hunting or is it good?
Have you ever done blintzes?
Have I ever done what?
Freeze-dried blintzes with like a farmer cheese filling?
I don't think I have.
This tastes so good, we're going to have fun in the park tonight.
Second.
Seconds. So if you're looking at like food storage, we do things like this. And if you have flour, you can cook a tortilla really easily and make a breakfast burrito. We do the same concept with, so if you have a garden, we make lettuce wrap filling. And what's that?
On a small, better have that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I thought you said twice as much.
Small.
That's really good.
Yeah, the salt's up here if you want it. How are we doing? Salt?
Add a little eggs to the salt.
That would make great breakfast, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Some people are lying. I'm on the back row, sir.
Is that everybody?
I'm giving Robert one. Can you get one?
Has everyone got one that wanted one?
Okay, that was everybody unless they want seconds.
Okay. Well, I'm going to dish out just I got a little bit more here, so.
Is this a breakfast casserole? You want to put the salt?
What's that?
Casserole.
Yeah. So the amount in this bag was one medium tray. 1 medium tray. So about half of that.
And that was this bottle.
I think,
And you put a little bit of that?
yeah, but it was probably about this much that I put in here. So, is this 32? 16? It's probably,
That's my gift. We're all gifts. I guess.
oh, there it is. Nope. Okay, I thought you were supposed to do it where you can read it easily. Oh, there it is. It's on the backside. It's 1 liter. So it's 33.8 fluid ounces. So, all right, I got one more. Who wants it?
I win the prize.
Okay, well, thank you. Yes.
So I did have a question. Do you think it's better to combine them all or versus making components and then mixing it with your, after you freeze-dried it and everything?
Yeah,
Meal?
it's really a preference. I like the eggs. If you pour the eggs over your potatoes and kind of scramble them in your potatoes, you get more of it's smoother. You don't get the chunks of eggs. I like the chunks of eggs. If you combine everything as you cook it, I called that river eggs. I was a river guide on the Middle Fork of the Salmon River, and whatever's left at the end of the trip all goes in a pot, scrambles up. So we called those river eggs, and they're good. It's just a different texture. So I like seeing, the chunks, but the taste I think is the same, other than the texture.
So
Yeah.
for this breakfast casserole, you cook each of the 3 components separately. Freeze dry them separately.
Nope. I combine them. So let me walk you through it one more time, and I'll give you the recipe for a medium. So it's 1 16-ounce bag of shredded potatoes. Sorry, back up. This is for a full medium. 2 16-ounce bags of shredded potatoes, 2 pounds of sausage, and 24 eggs. So,
And then what do you do with the cheese? Just sort of.
2 cups of cheese. Yes.
What fly do you use on the Salmon River?
We use a DuPont lure. Ever heard of that one?
No.
It's a 1/4 stick of dynamite about this big. Gets them every time. No. Oh, yes. Let's talk about that real quick. So the cookbook is in pre-release now. It will start selling today. So you can go to my website and pre-order that. And for whoever pre-orders, will get a bonus surprise with their book. Now, what's different about my book than any book out there? What we've done is the recipes, like what you have tasted, the recipes aren't just a recipe that someone's pulled out of a book. We've made them for your machine size. In other words, the recipe that I just told you is for a medium machine. So if you wanted to do the breakfast casserole, you know exactly how much to make to fill your 4 trays. But now 5 trays, right? Because as of July, the mediums have 5 trays instead of 4. And so, but every recipe will have medium, large, extra large, and will have the ingredients that you need to fill the machine with that recipe. Yes. And that's why we kind of had to add more time, because we decided to put in the pros, which is called the pro version, and that is the mediums have 5 instead of 4 now. So we've had to go back and redo or add the recipes to that. So that's different. The other thing is that there's not only the pro tips that we've talked about in our classes and things like that, but there's a QR code on each recipe. And if you scan that, it will take you to a video. And it's basically a cook with me video. And I take about 10 minutes. They're really short. They're not like the YouTube videos where you have to watch them for an hour, right? To get through it. They're really short, and they just show you the steps to make that recipe. So it's really, really short. I know a lot of feedback I get is I don't like doing meals, or I haven't done them before because I'm, and so that will help you do the meals. Yes.
Do the rehydrating process also?
Yes. Yes.
I know that's, I've always been real, I made an egg casserole, one of the first things I did. And right after I did it, then I got one out and tried it. And it worked, but I did it differently than you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm real leery about the, rehydrating and too much water, not enough.
And I will tell you, the way I rehydrate is different than anybody else, and they're smiling because they know. Let me come back to that. Let me take this question.
How much is your book?
$35. So yeah, it's $35. It's out on the website, and it's
At the beginning.
yeah, wasatchfreezedry.com. So the title of the book is Mastering Freeze Drying, fresh to forever. And then it has, they're simple everyday recipes. So, you look at some recipes and they got ingredients list this long, and that's not what we're all about. We want simple recipes just like this, 4 or 5 ingredients that are tasty, that last, that fill you up, and that are nutritious. So those are the type of recipes you're going to see in my book. So don't expect quiche and crepes and all that kind of stuff. I'm a meat and potatoes guy. Say that again. Oh, back to the website. There you go. Big blue on the top.
Website as far as the meal stuff.
Some of them. So, yeah. Everything on the website will be in the book, as well as additional ones too. What I've included some of the allergy foods for people with food allergies, like quinoa and things like that. Because there's a lot of people that can't have gluten and can't have soy and can't have certain things. And a lot you'll see in the recipes, we use liquid aminos and coconut aminos, if you're familiar with those. So people with allergies can have those unless you're celiac or something like that. But we don't use soy. It's not really good for you. But we use other things to make it more healthy. Okay?
So excited about your book.
Great. Well, thank you.
Expertise and your knowledge. We learned a ton today. Excited to use our freeze dryers, and thank you for the scramble. That was delicious. So thank you, Darren. Thank you, Robert, for the audio and everything for Zoom. And thank you all for coming tonight. And we'll let you know when our next one is. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, awesome. Awesome.
Did you want to have people try these?
Oh, yeah.
What's flavor?
Let's dump them out. They're kind of hard to, or just